What's going on? Welcome to this aftermarket stereo installation tutorial. I'll be replacing the stock stereo in my 2020 STI with a JVC floating head unit. My goal is to not only retain all of the functionality of the stock stereo, but also add some, while considerably improving the sound in the car. This is part 1, so make sure you check out part 2 to see the completed installation. Check the bookmarks for specific parts and share this video if it's useful. Let's get to it. So this right here is the stock head unit that came out of my 2020 STI right behind me. You can see that it comes out with the temperature controls, and if you look behind it, it also has a telematic unit right down here, which I'm going to talk to you about in a second. And I'm replacing this head unit with this JVC right here. Now I'm doing a whole separate review video on the JVC, and I'm going to go over everything in detail. But for now, I just wanted to show you the size difference and the mounting considerations. When you go with a floating head unit like this, you can see the size difference. This unit right here is massive, and as you can imagine, it's going to float over the dash. So one of the things that we have to take into account is how we're going to get the stereo portion of the new head unit that we're replacing into the dash, because obviously it's not going to fit on here. And for that, we're going to have to get a dash kit like this one right here. But the dash kit is going to allow us to install the double din radio into the space provided by the stock head unit. Modern vehicles come with a lot of infotainment features, and those infotainment features are actually wrapped up into the stock head unit. Things like your Starlink, your OnStar, your door chimes, your steering wheel controls, and this right here is a proprietary radio. So out of the box, a new head unit is not going to be able to retain all of those features. What we're going to need for that is going to be one of these Maestro units. This iData Link Maestro unit actually will allow you to program all of those buttons on the steering wheel and do much more. I will go over this in detail, but this is something that you will have to get if you want to retain that functionality. Now, if you don't, then your installation can be far simpler. But you know, if you have a new car, you probably want to retain those nice things. Even things like your USB port, your auxiliary port, all of those things, you'll be able to retain all of it, but you're gonna need something like this. So it's a cost that you're just gonna have to suck up if you want to get that functionality out of a new stereo. Another thing that you're gonna need is a harness kit. This harness kit works in conjunction with this Maestro kit right here. This is SU2, stands for Subaru. This is the one that works with this particular car right here and this particular stereo. And this is going to allow us to do a largely plug and play installation. Not entirely, but largely. So this is going to help immensely. But even though your new head unit comes with a lot of cables, it actually doesn't come with everything that you're going to need. For instance, this right here is an antenna adapter, and you're going to need this to use the car stock antenna with your new stereo. Another thing that you're going to need is this micro bypass, and what this is going to do is going to allow you to use your head unit, your new head unit, while the car is driving. Now you might say that's unsafe, but a lot of times we all know we go on long road trips and other people are in the passenger seat and they might want to dig into some of those menus, and if you plug it and install it as is, you're not going to be able to do any of that stuff while you're driving, and that just gets irritating. There are a couple things that this is going to allow you to do very easily. One of them is retaining your factory rear camera, which we all want to do, and I'll show you that. But it's very easy. You don't have to worry about anything else. You don't have to get a 12 to 6 volt converter like you used to in the past. This is also going to give you a connection to the OBD port, and since this particular radio supports gauges, by using the Maestro in conjunction with this harness kit, you'll actually be able to add all those gauges, code reader, and much more to the stereo, which supports it. Now you can only do that if your particular stereo that you bought supports it. So if that's something you want, something that you have to consider when you're shopping for your stereo. So check the review video out so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so I have the stock head unit right here, and I want to talk to you about the telematics unit. That's this little box right here. This box is not part of the radio. It works in conjunction with the radio, but it's not actually part of it. It's not built into it. So I'm about to remove it by taking off these 4 screws that are on the sides. But I wanted to tell you real quick what's happening. What's happening here is that your front speakers actually go from your head unit through the telematics unit, and the telematics unit actually outputs the audio to the front speakers. So if you unplug this telematics unit, say you don't want to use it, then you're not going to get any audio out of your front speakers, and you'll wonder what the issue is. And that's because the Starlink features that allow things like roadside assistance and for a remote operator to talk to you in the car actually gets processed by this unit right here. So when that happens, the unit is outputting the audio to the front speakers, and that's why they do that. That's why the audio from the front speakers only go from the head unit through the telematics unit. So there are two things that you can do to make this work, because there's not a lot of room back there to actually hide it anywhere, but I'll show you what I did to give you an idea. Another option is you can buy a harness that actually reroutes the front speakers back to the harness that goes to the stereo. So you're basically bypassing Starlink, and then you can just remove it completely if you don't want the features from Starlink. Okay, so this is the telematics unit. You could actually see that the portion that actually has the circuitry is actually rather small. I'm gonna reuse it and put it back in there. So what I'm basically gonna be doing is, because I don't want this laying down there. There's metal down there and the computer is also down there, and you don't want this just banging down in there. Not only is it dangerous for this thing because it'll probably break it at some point, but it'll create a rattle point and it's just, you know, not right. So I am going to use 3M tape on the side right here, because there's a metal bracket there, and this can sit right against the metal bracket on the left side like this, and then it's gonna sit on basically on the ground like that. So I'm gonna put this right here. This is door flashing weather strip, and I just happen to have this laying around, and it just so happens to be like the exact width of the telematics unit. You can see that right there. So I'm gonna put this underneath right here. First I'm gonna clean it with alcohol because I definitely don't want this to fail, and then I'm gonna put this right underneath there. Okay, you can see how that compresses and conforms. So instead of the plastic just laying down there, it's gonna be this right here, and it'll just kind of take the shape of whatever's down there. And then the next step is gonna be the 3M tape, and the 3M tape is gonna go right there. Now I'm gonna go in the car, and then when I'm done with that, I'll plug in all these plugs right back in there, and that should retain full functionality of the telematics unit. There's really not much of an option as far as relocating this thing, because all these plugs are right there and they're not very long. So it's not like I can, you know, put it in the trunk or something or move it somewhere else. I would have to make extensions for everything, and it would be an even bigger nightmare. So this is what I came up with. We'll see if it works. So I did record this whole process, but my GoPro errored out on me and the video ended up corrupted. Here you can see it's already done exactly like I described. It's secured on the left side with 3M tape and resting below, and then above it we still have room for the harness and the new stereo. Let's move on. So I want to get the new dash kit ready. You can see here that the temperature controls came with a head unit, so we have to remove that so we can put it on the new dash kit. It's got 4 screws in the back, which is simple enough. All you have to do is take out those 4 screws, and then that temperature control unit comes right out. For the doubled-in faceplate, I chose this piano black kit. There are a couple options out there, but for the price, this seemed like the best. You can see the mounting brackets are metal, which is not always the case. So now it's time to get this dash kit ready here. First thing we have to do is put the brackets in the new stereo. And if you look closely, that one says R, the other one says L. So that doesn't leave a lot to figure out, but there is something to consider. So I'm on the left side here, I'm gonna grab the L. The long bracket goes on the bottom of the stereo. You can put it just like that. And here's the tricky part. Okay, there's a lot of slots here that are gonna allow you to move this bracket up and down to get the stereo flush with your dash, okay? So this might require a little bit of trial and error. I can tell you right now that for this particular stereo, this particular car, you know, the 3rd spot from the front is the perfect spot. But you might have to guess, put it in the middle, and then place the stereo on the dash and look at it and see if it's flush. If it's flush, then you're good to go. If not, then move it accordingly up and down until you get the perfect fit. Once you've determined the right spot, simply use the 4 screws from your hardware kit and secure the brackets to the new stereo. Then grab the climate controls and its 4 screws and secure the controls to your dash kit. Pretty simple, but be careful not to over tighten the screws because they are going into plastic and you can easily strip them. Once the stereo is installed, the dash kit will simply clip on over it like this. Now let's move on to pre-staging the rest of the accessories. If your stereo supports gauges and you want to use them, you have to plug in the OBD cable to the OBD port and then route it to the stereo cavity. You can kind of see that here, although I definitely still need to clean this up a bit, but I just wanted to give you an idea. There is an access hole right on the side here that goes right into the back of the stereo. My only tips are to ensure that the cables are 100% secure down here with high quality zip ties and that you can still move your steering wheel freely. This is where I place my microphone and it routes back there to the same spot. Make sure you place it where it can clearly pick up your voice so you don't have issues. If the aftermarket stereo you chose has wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, it may require the installation of a separate GPS antenna. This antenna has to be installed inside of the car, have clear view of the sky, and be mounted horizontally. This spot right here is perfect on this car, just as an idea. The cable can easily be tucked and hidden right along the dash and under the pillar. It comes out right down here, and then it can easily be routed right to the stereo. So now we have everything in place to install this stereo, except of course the main harness, which I cover in detail in part 2. So check that out to see that and the completed installation. Thanks so much for watching. If you appreciate the video, I would appreciate a like and consider subscribing for more. Take care.